Hello. First of all, greetings to all of you from wet, cold London. I miss you all. I wish I could be with you, and I hope you have a truly wonderful General Assembly for ActionAid. Now, I've been told that I've got just 15 minutes to talk to you a little bit about the context of internationalisation and how ActionAid started down the complicated and challenging road that is internationalisation. And I have to say, because this is such a big subject and it involves so much of the history of ActionAid and how it got to be where it is today, I'm not sure that I can do it justice in 15 minutes, but I will try. I think the first thing that I should say is that this was really quite an amazing thing for a board of trustees to do, and something that not many other organisations had even contemplated, far less put into practice in the way that ActionAid did. And it was amazing because the trustees of ActionAid at that time had to give up their control, their ownership of the organisation, not just to hand over the assets of ActionAid, but to forgo their ability in the future to direct it and to create a completely new international organisation to which they would transfer their powers and responsibilities. And that was a very big step for the individuals and for the collective board of trustees to make. And I think that ActionAid should be very proud of itself, because this was a first and no other organisation had attempted anything so ambitious. So it was a very, very big step. Now, I have to say right from the beginning that I should pay tribute to the many individuals who made this event happen. I was lucky enough to be chairman of trustees in 1998 when the board appointed Salil Shetty as chief executive, and Salil was our first non-Western chief executive, and he brought a wind of change to ActionAid, which was very much needed. And I think I have to say, I don't think at the time that the board knew exactly where it wanted to get to or how it was going to get there, but it did know that this was a path that we had to take. It was a journey that we had to go on. And so if you ask me why did ActionAid go for internationalisation, I would have to say that the answer is very simple. It was absolutely the right thing to do. And then as we went down that process, we learned that it had many individual advantages. So I'd like to just take you back in history a little bit to try and give you a sense of how ActionAid got into that position. And I'm able to do this because I started working for ActionAid in 1977. And so I remember the board as it was originally constituted, and I worked with the founder, Cecil Jackson Cole, who was also the founder of Oxfam and who started ActionAid in the early 1970s. And the board that he set up was in no way a very good example of good governance, but it wasn't untypical of charity boards at the time. The appointees were all made personally by Mr. Jackson Cole himself, and they were appointed because they were people who would do his bidding. They all came from the south of England. They were all English. They were all rich white men by comparison. And as I say, it was a board which at the time, I think our process in the management team was we rather sort of worked round the board rather than seeing them as a group that would actually add value to what ActionAid was doing. And I think we were conscious from way back then that however well-intentioned the organisation was, we did not have a good example of a governance model. Now, when I came back to ActionAid as a trustee, as a volunteer in the mid-1990s, things had changed, and they'd changed for the better. They'd moved on quite a lot. We had several women on the board. We had recruited a number of quite eminent academics, men and women, and we had development expertise on the board which hadn't existed in the early days, and this was very positive. But once again, the board was all British. The qualification for the board, or one of the primary qualifications, was that you had to be within commuting distance of London. And it was very obvious, I think, to most of the people who sat round the board table that we were not a truly democratic representative board. And so the first step towards internationalization, I think, was to open our governance and actively recruit people from all over the world. And this was an expensive thing to do. We had to invest quite a lot in the governance structure of ActionAid. We had to fly people into meetings, and there was a great additional investment that this called for. But it was unquestionably the right thing to do. And I think a very important spur to this process of internationalization, which really started in the late 1990s, was the debate around campaigning and service delivery. And ActionAid's focus had always been service delivery, and we were a conservative organization. If you like, the history of ActionAid was that we were London-owned, conservative with a small c, quite top-down in the way that we managed our affairs. And I think what we needed, if I can borrow a phrase from the new strategy, is that we needed to take a political step. We needed political change rather than just technical change. I think that's how it's expressed in the strategy, and it's a very important thought to cling to. Political change, not just technical change. So we were concerned then to become a campaigning organization, and many people on the board felt that we could also continue to improve the lives of the people that we worked with by the provision of a whole range of appropriate services. But equally, we needed to campaign for political change and to become much more dynamic and much more aggressive in our campaigning stance. Now, Salil Shetty told me early on in our relationship as chair and chief executive that he wanted to see the organization embrace political change. And I think that in many ways this was the right thing for us to do. We didn't really have an option not to do it. And the big issue for us at the time was credibility for ActionAid, particularly in the south with the countries where we were working. And it was fairly obvious to anybody who looked in ActionAid at any depth that the governance structure of the organization did not reflect the broad principles of ActionAid, its mission and its vision and its values. And that had to change. One of the first things that we did was recruiting trustees from India, from Brazil, from Guatemala, from Uganda to come and sit on our board. And that added a tremendous vitality and breadth to our discussions. And it was then that I realized this wasn't just the right thing to do, but it was also the best thing to do. Our wonderful trustee from Thailand, Sri Prafa, described this as ActionAid's rainbow effect, all the colors and flavors and tastes and, of the marketplace. And I think that was a good way of describing it. We suddenly found that our governance was hugely enriched by the addition of all these new faces. And so we were able to work towards a balanced board representative of the many countries and continents that ActionAid works in, and truly with the right skills and balance of qualities that we needed to have an effective board. And I think our governance started to add value and started to be appreciated and used by the management more, not as something to be worked around, but as something that they could be proud of and that would add value to the work of ActionAid like any other organization. Now, it was a difficult road to internationalization, and we had our French independent affiliates, we had our Spanish affiliates, and I think it became fairly clear early on in the negotiations, although we tried very, very hard, it became fairly clear that we would not be able to take the French and the Spanish with us. And the reason was that their boards were not sufficiently committed to the ideal that they would give up ownership to an international organization. They still wanted, in their view, the right thing to do was to retain control. And we disagreed on that, and so we had to proceed with internationalization without the French and the Spanish. But I hope sometime that in the future, when they're ready, that they will come round to that, and obviously ActionAid still works towards that. But we did have early achievements, particularly with the first boards in countries like Ghana, like Uganda, like Guatemala, like India, who started to move their process quite quickly towards affiliation, and where we could see that there was a rich, highly qualified and well-motivated board of trustees who was coming forward in that country. Now, obviously, there's a huge investment in time, and there's a price that we pay, if you like, in adding layers of bureaucracy to the organization. But the fact is, the end result is worth it. The achievement in terms of ownership and independence, and the fact that all of you are able to sit round this table now and listen to me going on, this is, if you like, a direct reflection of the outcomes of that internationalization process. So I just, I could go on about the governance model and the terms of reference and all that, but I can't do that justice in 15 minutes. And I would say to you, your history deserves that you give it more than 15 minutes, because there's much that you can learn from in terms of how we evolved. And it has been an evolution rather than I think at times it seemed like a revolution, but it was mostly an evolutionary process that has enabled us to get to where we are. And I think if we neglect our history, we miss out a great deal on the understanding the qualities of what it is that makes us ActionAid. So finally, just to end, does internationalization fit with the new strategy? I think very definitely it does. I think we could no longer justify an undemocratic, northern-based, money-driven organization would not be able to write the words that you have put into this ambitious new strategy. So almost everything that is described there actually is rooted in the process towards implementation. I don't claim to have studied the new strategy in any great detail, but there is a phrase which I think is very important that I'd like to quote from it. And in it you say that you are committed to strengthening our unique governance model to bring decision-making closer to the point of impact, to be sure that internationalization is seen as a political, not just a technical project, to work to overcome the bureaucracy that might be attendant upon this structure, and to strengthen our accountability. And I think fundamentally, to end, you will be required to make, all of you, a renewed commitment to dual citizenships, which is your national and your international responsibilities, and to the process of sharing rule. And I think that is very well put in the new strategy. So good luck. I don't think this path that you have taken is going to be easy, but I do hope you enjoy your important role in the governance and direction and in supporting the management of ActionAid. And I'm absolutely sure that if you do, then you too, as you face the new challenges that ActionAid is going to be addressing, you too will do the right thing. So I wish you a very happy, successful and productive General Assembly. Thank you.